Chicago Crime Files. Up until this point in Chicago's history, most of the violence has been orchestrated and perpetrated by ethnic whites, mostly against other ethnic whites, which holds true in the origins of Chicago's street gangs. The 42 gang was a foreign game for future members of the Chicago outfit. These kids knew or were related to key mob figures, and once they proved themselves or got old enough, they would gain entry into the outfit. That mode of reasoning is how Chicago gang structure began to take form. The Grand Avenue crew was part of the Chicago outfit. As young men, they started the C-Notes, an Italian greaser gang, formed in 1952 in the West Town or Patch neighborhood of Chicago. The C-Note's history is unique in its origin story due to its connection to the mob, which makes early C-Note history pretty much non-existent. Most other white Chicago gangs started as social clubs, the Almighty Gaylords. At their peak, the Almighty Gaylords were Chicago's largest white street gang and the fourth largest gang in Chicago. The Almighty Gaylords is a violent and bigoted organization comprised of Irish, Greek, and Italian original members. The Gaylords are linked to the 1970 racially motivated murder of Joe Henson, a case which is steeped in political and police corruption. The Playboys. Founded in 1958, the Playboys started as a softball team that was comprised of Irish, Polish, and German youths in the West Town or East Village area of Chicago. The Playboys developed to protect themselves from the C-Notes, the Gaylords, and the Lazy Gents. The Ventures. Originally known as the Son of Satan's Slaves, they started as a softball league. They developed into a gang because they needed protection from the Gaylords, the C-Notes, and the Lazy Gents. Shy West Gang developed in 1958 in the Ukrainian Village area of Chicago. They were Ukrainian greasers formed to prevent Puerto Ricans from moving into their neighborhood on Chicago Avenue and Western Avenue. Chicago gang activity was primarily race-based. Several Irish, Italian, and Greek gangs operated in full capacity by the mid-1960s. Early gangs advertised their gang affiliation by wearing varsity-style sweaters and by handing out complimentary/business cards that had a gang member's name, gang affiliation, phone number, and even other gang members listed. It was common practice to beat up a rival gang member, steal his sweater, and resew his gang patch upside down on the sweater as a sign of disrespect. Gangs stopped wearing the sweaters because the sweaters made the gang members more susceptible for shootings or targets for arrest. The origin story for gangs of color is something different. Gangs of color were born out of a need for protection, for not only themselves, a protection for their communities as well. The Almighty Latin King Nation. The Almighty Latin King Nation was formulated in 1954 and is comprised of two gangs. The Imperials, whose members were Mexican and Puerto Rican, and the Markings, whose members were Mexican. These two gangs came together and formulated the Almighty Latin King Nation to protect themselves and their neighborhoods from being bullied by white, Italian, and Greek greaser gangs. The Almighty Latin King Nation is the largest and the oldest Hispanic street gang in the entire world. The Almighty Black Peastone Nation. By 1955, Chicago's Woodlawn neighborhood was transitioning from a white neighborhood into a black one. Racial tension among black and Italian youths led to the formation of Italian greaser gangs, which in turn led Woodlawn youths to form a gang to defend themselves. Known as the Players or the Junior Players, they were formed to defend the black community. The group ended up dissolving, but some members of the Players formed a new group named after the street that they came from. The gang was named the Blackstone Raiders, originally community defenders more than any other Southside gang. The Raiders had a large following, more so than the Players, and they spread to Inglewood. By 1958, the Raiders had beef with the Egyptian Cobras and the Greaser gangs. 12-year-old Jeff Ford seized control of the Raiders and changed the name to Blackstone Rangers. Jeff was originally a member of the Woodlawn Boys Club, the 63rd, and was kicked out for unruly behavior. In 1965, the Rangers began an alliance with Ed Woods of the Woodlawns Boys Club and Reverend O.H. Wilson of the Emmanuel Lutheran Church. 3 days a week, the gang was allowed to play sports and have parties. Reverend John Fry of the First Presbyterian Church wanted the gang to be a community-based organization more so than a gang. Fry helped the Rangers obtain a federal grant. The Rangers also absorbed other gangs. Rangers are also the first gang to spread to Chicago suburbs in 1966 with the Dixmoor Rangers. The Almighty Vice Lord Nation. The Vice Lords were started by several incarcerated boys in St. Charles Juvenile Penitentiary. Upon release, the group started to recruit and eventually grew to the second largest gang in Chicago. In 1970, the Vice Lords received a $275,000 grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. The Mickey Cobras. Originally known as the Egyptian Cobras, the Mickey Cobras policed the police, received a government grant to feed kids breakfast, and they set the template for the free school lunch program. The Mickey Cobras also organized the South Side Union. The Black Disciples. In the late 1950s, blacks were moving into southern Kenwood and Inglewood at high rates, which caused resentment and bullying by the Italians in the neighborhood and other gangs that bullied the new kids moving in. Boys aged 11 to 13 started a club to defend themselves against the bullies. The name chosen was the Devil's Disciples, and the headquarters for the club was at 53rd and Kenbar. By 1961, they were the most powerful gang in Inglewood, and 14-year-old David Barksdale took over leadership and absorbed smaller gangs. The Black Disciples ran job training centers for Woodlawn youths. Gangster Disciples. 13-year-old Larry Hoover moved from behind the scenes of the Supreme Gangsters in 1965 to become the official leader, eventually becoming Chicago's largest street gang. The Gangster Disciples operated a cleanup program for the community, enforced school truancy policies, and ran a free lunch program at 6th and Halsted.